Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, morning.
Thanks for making the trip down. The trip from Atlanta is always an adventure.
Always.
Let's start by just having each of you introduce yourselves, just a little bit about where you're from and what led you to come to law school.
All right, I'll start. I am from Tennessee originally. I did my undergraduate at the University of Tennessee. Moved to Georgia for a job a couple of years after undergraduate. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. The job that brought me here ended abruptly. Yay! I was like, all I have to do is pay rent. Yeah. So I was like, well, I was thinking about law, and so I got a job as a legal assistant trying to feel out if I'm going to spend all that time and money going to law school, is it something that I really want to do? So I worked as a legal assistant for a couple of years, decided, yep, this is definitely something that I want to do, and so I got into Mercer.
All right.
Yay.
I followed the, traditional path. Went straight from high school, college, law school. I kind of always knew I wanted to go that route. What I didn't know was where I wanted to go to law school, so had a good time at UGA for undergrad, but decided that if I tried to go to law school there, I wouldn't be passing. So I decided to go somewhere else, applied to Mercer. That's why I ended up here and haven't regretted a single choice and haven't looked back.
You mean you came to Macon because Macon is more boring than Athens?
It was a change of scenery.
I am recording. That's right. Well,
I had a non-traditional path as well, similar to Minerva. My being enrolled in law school was a result of things not going according to plan everywhere I turned. So I thought I was going to be a professional athlete, found out very quickly I wasn't good enough. I went into business, became a banker, thought maybe I would be a bank president one day. My bank got bought out, and I had to change careers abruptly, and I thought about going to law school, had taken the LSAT, but never really took it very seriously, and then had a conversation with a mentor of mine and realized that my potential was in practicing law. So I came to law school at Mercer.
well, your law school experience is much more recent than most of the people that sit up here with me on Mondays and Friday mornings. Could you talk a little bit with the students about that experience and what helped you, what maybe didn't help you to do what you do now, and if you had any particular experiences or classmates or professors that you remember, fondly or not, I'd be interested to hear that.
I guess I'll start. The clearest example is our law firm. I mean, we're in the same section, so the friendships and professional relationships that you make here can and probably will carry with you for the rest of your professional lives. So, as far as our experience, and that's the biggest impact that law school's had. Not only were we able to get a degree that's allowed us to practice law, but we also now have a business out of it. So I'd say that's the biggest experience that continues into the future. As far as specific professors, I mean, it's not that long ago, so I can remember every single one of them. I remember sitting where you guys are currently sitting. I remember sitting in Professor Cresswell's Torts 1 and 2. I remember sitting in Professor Wells' contracts and business association. So remember all of them with fond memories, and the only ones that aren't fond are studying for the tests. But again, that's the study group is where we all kind of formulated this mad plan to start our law firm. So studying for tests also had its uses too.
I'll go. I was 7 years out of any sort of school when I decided to go to law school, and I had no idea what I was doing again because I had to teach myself how to study again. And everybody in this room is used to being the smartest person in the room, especially high school and undergrad. That's what we're all used to. Oh, yeah, I got this. Maybe you didn't have to study that much, like I didn't. I mean, I did the work, and you do what you have to do to get by. But coming to law school, it's completely different. And again, I was 7 years out from having to read and then remember and then take a test on it and all this sort of stuff. So it was very different for me because I had to reteach myself how to learn and then do that in law school, which is very different. So I struggled a lot the first semester because I had no idea what I was doing. And I also kind of went into it a little bit blind, which I wouldn't recommend, in that people were all talking about outlines. I had no idea what an outline was. People had all those little study books. I was like, what's that? So it took me a semester to adjust, and the first semester was my worst semester, but then kind of once I got back into it, it was much easier. So I would say, I mean, you're already here, but you know, looking back, I would have probably paid a little more attention going into what was really required. Probably would have helped my transition back into school a little bit easier. But when I got here, like Matt said, you have to find a study habit that works for you, because I tried to do my own outline because I was used to doing my own work, and that worked for me in undergrad. But I got to law school, it was way too time consuming and didn't work for me. It took way too long. I was halfway done with my outlines and I was walking into the test. I was like, this isn't going to be great. So you know, you have to find what works for you. And I tried different study groups and they didn't, you know, I didn't really quite fit in. And it's okay saying, I like you as people, but I can't study with you. You know, and that's okay to say, because again, you have to do what's right for you, because this is your academic career and this is your future. And I walked into Matt and Walt's study group and they politely didn't kick me out. And so here we are today. I'd say as far as teacher goes, you know, all the teachers at Mercer are great. Professor Snedden stuck out to me the most. I went in as a very strong writer already. I love writing, kind of a little pastime, a little hobby of mine, but legal writing is so different than just like writing for fun and creative writing. But channeling my creative writing into a legal format was something that she helped me shape. And I'm an excellent legal writer. I don't know if I can brag like that, but yeah, I'm really good at it. And so it's something that I was pretty good at coming in, and the teachers here just helped me sort of shape the skill that I already have, and it's really, really useful today because I use it every day, and more than you thought you would.
What you want?
For me, I would say, and this is maybe extending beyond actually the law school experience, if you look around the folks who are next to you, you're gonna need somebody in this room at some point. So having that sense of community, if you're a lone wolf, if you're the gunner, if you're the person that doesn't like to share information or you don't want to see someone else succeed, don't let this environment make you feel like it's you against the world, because it's not. The Mercer Law School community is strong, and what you'll also realize is when you get out and you start practicing, you're gonna need to rely on each other. And at some point, you're gonna realize that. It may not be now, but maybe when you're out of school. I think what Mercer did for me was connecting me with Mercer alumni early, and I got an understanding of what it was going to be like outside of school. So making those connections, just the access to the folks that you have, the human capital for Mercer University is strong. So if you get a chance to tap into that, network, go to functions, meet folks. As far as here and professors, I would say, because I came here as a businessman, I thought when I left here I would be a businessman, and at first I wasn't. I practiced with a large law firm for a while, and then now look at me, I'm a business person. We own our own law firm. So I came here for the business courses, the tax courses. I enjoyed Professor Wells. I think we had the business associations class with him, securities, regulations. But do not underestimate what you're learning in this course. I know it's early in the morning. I know it's a little tough to get here, but we've already reached out to Professor Long at least 3 or 4 times with ethical issues. This course can impact your career as an attorney. Your license kind of relies on what you're learning in this class. So don't take this stuff lightly. The last thing you want to do is be before a bar explaining yourself and making some type of misstep. So kind of learn from the mistakes that I'm sure you're learning about in this class.
I didn't realize you all were a study group. That's
Section 4.
Section 4? Yeah, that's a different kind of loyalty. Well, you all came out 2013. You didn't form your law firm right away. Right? Each of you had your own paths. So I'm curious about, with respect to each of you, what your first job was, and what you liked about it and didn't like about it. And I guess as a preface to that, I mean, what did you all have in the back of your mind doing this all along? This is, so maybe so. But let's talk about first steps. When you first came out of law school, your first jobs.
My first job out of law school, I was working for a large firm in Albany or Albany, depending upon whether you're actually from down there or not, Georgia, and 14 to 16 attorneys, depending upon the day. And yeah, we did most of what you would expect a medium law firm in a relatively medium-sized city to do. We did everything from showing up to being the prosecutor at local traffic court, all the way over to estate work, to business disputes. I mean, we had the whole gambit. And, you know, kind of got dipped my toes in the water when it comes to actually what does the practice of law entail. To answer the question, was it always on my mind? Absolutely. We had come out, I guess we were part of the last class that was really the downturn in 2008 and 2009 kind of rushed a lot of people into law school, and our class was the last of those to kind of trickle out, so the legal market was flooded, and thankfully we all got jobs out of law school, but we had the, I guess you could call it, for lack of a better term, a suicide pact. If we don't get jobs, then we're going to join together, but we all got jobs. So yes, it was always on the back of our minds, but we always wanted to figure out how to practice law before taking on the additional responsibility of not only practicing law, but also running a business. And those are entirely different things. So I guess that's my first job in the journey to owning the law firm.
I, as a 1L, did a minority diversity clerkship with a large law firm in Atlanta. Did well. They invited me back my second year, and by the time I started my 3L year, I had a role with that firm. They were based out of Louisville, Kentucky. Awesome firm. Spent a lot of time with them. Learned a lot. Did a lot of business litigation, construction litigation, representing banks, lenders. Got promoted, so to speak, but that promotion entailed moving to Louisville, Kentucky. And I picked up the phone and called these guys and said, were y'all serious about trying to do this? And they were like, yeah. So I basically waited on them to decide when it was time for them to exit, and we formed our firm. But yes, my first job out of school was practicing with a large law firm. And then I enjoyed the fact that we would be able to run our own company, because then I got some flexibility. What I didn't like about what I did was my billable hour rate and requirement was so extensive that I found that my work-life balance was getting off, and there's things that I wanted to do. One of those was own my own company. So I found the time when we started our law firm, it gave me the flexibility to invest in a franchise, which I own outside of practicing law, which I never would have been able to do that had I stayed with my firm.
What was your billable hour expectation?
2,000.
Okay. And was that the real number, or was the real number a little higher than that?
A little higher. The on-paper number was get to 2,000, and it was, I mean, I hit it for the most part. I think my first couple of years I didn't, but after that I got to the point where I could hit it. But what, you know, and everyone's different. That may be what you like. I knew I didn't want to be a partner at any point, so when that time came, I wasn't going to accept the partnership anyway. So I knew kind of what my goals were, what my path in life was. So I didn't need to hit those billable hours on a consistent basis to the point where I was trying to become a partner. That wasn't my path in life. I wanted to go a different route. It just kind of happened faster than I thought, because my firm came to me and said, "You're doing good work. We have a role for you in another office. You have to move to Kentucky." And I thought maybe this is the point where it's time to make that decision to exit. So,
What about you, Mary?
My first job out was awful. I hated the guy. I loved the work. And that just happens sometimes. And looking back, it's one of those things. I had a whole bunch of interviews lined up, and a lot of them with judges, different clerkships. That's where that strong writing came in. And instead of actually sitting through all those interviews and then making a wise, careful, reasoned decision, I took the first offer that came, and that's a mistake. Don't do that. But at the time, like Matt said, the market was kind of weird, and I was like, oh yeah, I got a job offer, so I just took it. And I feel like looking back, it was a mistake. I actually really loved the work. I worked for a single practitioner who did really, really big litigation cases. So he would only have 2 or 3 cases at the same time, but they settled or got verdicts for millions and millions of dollars. It was really interesting working for him, but he was a terrible person. He was a good lawyer, but we did not get along, and so I didn't work for him for very long. But my second job was great because I found what I do now, which is what I love, which is working for a pretty medium-sized personal injury workers' compensation firm. I learned a lot there. I didn't even know what workers' compensation was when I started. So you learn a lot, and so my lesson would be, take your time. Do not jump into the first job offer that comes, especially if it doesn't feel right. You know, in an interview, you're like, but I need the job. But be careful, because it was a mistake that I made, and I don't recommend it. It was kind of a disaster, and then you're struggling to find, oh God, is this how it's always going to be when it's your first experience? But my second job out was really great. Again, I stayed at that firm for 4 years. Learned a lot, and really learned also that it's really what I love doing, and it's what I do now.
Talk to me about the process. I mean, once the decision's been made, you are talking about forming your own firm. What all is involved in that process? What were your hopes? What were you shooting for? Autonomy, obviously one of them. But I also want to know what you were most afraid of, because it had to be a scary thing so early in your careers to do
It's
this.
still scary. We're not out of the woods. We've been open, we're going on a year?
Almost 2.
Going on 2 years, so failure. But it also motivates you to wake up in the morning and get going. And I like that drive. It may not be for everyone. If you like the safe routes, go that route. We're all in agreement that if I'm going to fall on my face, if I'm going to fail, it's going to be on my terms. And we're going forward. So, a lot goes into it, and we're learning as we go, the business side of it, the administrative side of it. We kind of miss practicing law. There'll be days when we're talking about it would be cool if we could be lawyers today. And so I think that was a part of we were kind of not expecting. But as far as the fear piece, I think for all of us, it was a motivating factor, and we are betting on ourselves, and we're confident in our abilities.
I'd say as far as the logistics, and I'll go back and answer part of the previous question was, did I always want to start my own law firm? And my answer to that was no. I was terrified. I was like, I never want to take this. Just sit me in a corner, give me a whole bunch of work to do, and I'll be happy the rest of my life. And then I changed. And then my ideas of that changed because I started working for people. And while I love the work and I love what I didn't like how it was being managed. I didn't agree with all of the decisions. I didn't agree with everything that I was being asked to do. So my mind started to change a little bit. It's not the work that bothered me. It was, some of the decisions that were being made, some of the things that I was asking to be done, and I was like, there's a better way to do that. And if you tell yourself that enough times, there's a better way. I could do this myself. I can do this myself. And then you start to build yourself up. It's like, no, wait, I can do this. I can do this. And then you're like, okay. And then you jump. And then you figure out what you're doing after you've made the decision that that's something that you want and it's something that you feel like you can do. And the logistics are crazy. We're still figuring out the logistics today. The first thing is open a bank account with those 2 accounts. So probably the first thing you learned in here. You have to open your IOLTA account. You have to open your operating account. You have to get insurance. Those were the first 3 things that we did. We registered the firm name, set up email accounts. And this was like in the first week. These are things that you have to have before really you can even take case 1. You have to have a phone number. You have to have an email address. You have to have the bank account. You have to have insurance. So those, I think, are the first logistics that we figured out. And then some of the more ticky-tack stuff is software. Are you going to have operating software? There's a lot of different options out there. Which one do you go with? Which one can you afford? Because operating software is pretty expensive. And I worked for firms that didn't have it, and it was fine. But then you also felt like maybe my client's information isn't safe, and then that's an ethical issue. Like, well, how much do I have to pay to keep their information safe, and what can I afford? So all of these things start to come up as you get into it. I'm gonna let Matt take over because he's a lot better.
And I'll mention too that we didn't have office space.
Yeah.
So our office meetings took place at, Matt has a cool patio. We sat on his patio, I think our first few meetings. Would not advise it, but if you got nice lawn furniture, okay, so we did that. Then my kitchen table. Then we all had our own offices in our houses, and then we got to the point where we had office space, and now where we are now. So that was the part we hadn't even, I don't think we even considered that at first. We were like, oh, wait a minute, we got to have somewhere to meet people. We met some clients at Starbucks.
A lot of Starbucks meetings first.
And we traveled to some folks because we were remote. We'll come to you. They didn't know my office was the trunk of my car. So it's not super glamorous, but if you believe in yourself, and that's what we felt like, you know, we'd be to a point where we're on now, where we have our office space. So.
And the logistics that Minerva's had, I mean, they are a handful. However, you can parcel it up into individual little tasks, so it's not impossible. And that's what we did. We just said, on Monday we're getting the bank account set up. On Tuesday we're making sure that the insurance is set up and ready to go. On Wednesday we're going to investigate and select a appropriate practice management software. You know, so forth and so on. So you can do and this includes legal work, you can do a ridiculous amount of work so long as you have an ordered process to go through and do it. And that's really what we did, is just in order to set everything up, we just had to sit down and kind of plan it out. How are we going to do it? What's our deadline date? We just, you know, on our first patio meeting, we discussed when are we opening the doors and what do we have to do to be ready for that point. It wasn't quite as bad as Walton Plies, but it was close. Where we had a mailing address. You know, you don't necessarily have to have physical space anymore. There's lots of solo practitioners out there that don't. And in fact, our current office space is at a communal office park where, you know, we've got all sorts of people in there, and there's 7 or 8 different law firms in there, and I think 3 or 4 of them don't even have physical offices. They just use it as a mailing address. So, you know, your practice can be as flexible as you want it to be, and that's what we were looking for when we started our firm. We wanted to run it our way. So if we want to have a virtual space, virtual law firm, then we can certainly do it that way. Now, our practice has morphed into where we need physical space, and that was a challenge that we then had to overcome. But the main craziness of the logistics is trying to overcome each challenge as it arises, and you won't know what they are until that challenge arises.
So day one, did you have any clients?
No.
You didn't. None of you brought clients in from your previous.
We brainstormed a lot, and I, you know, thought I had clients. You know, I would just call all these people and say, I have my own place now. They would all just come beat down the door. And,
There was no door.
yeah, no door. But we had connections, network, and we bought a lot of donuts and knocked on a lot of doors, and got the word out and let people know who we were.
And reached out to the Mercer Mafia and asked for some help.
Mercer Nation is the most.
The firm I left was a personal injury firm, and I wanted to do that. And there were clients that I wanted to take with me, but it was more of the logistics of taking them with me that I kind of didn't want to deal with. So we made the conscious effort, essentially not to take old clients from my old firm, so that it could be a clean break, so that I wouldn't have to go back to that firm and figure out who's getting what portion of the attorney's fees. And it was those sort of logistics, and just because you never know how feelings are involved when you leave a place. And I just didn't want to deal with it, and so I kind of took the risk that I'm going to leave all of my clients, and that was a conscious decision because clients do have the choice. It's not like I couldn't have taken them. I could have, the right thing to do is write all your clients a letter saying I'm leaving. You have the choice of a lawyer. You can stay where you are. You can come with me, and that's the right way to do it. But I just told them that I was leaving, but didn't really say. And if they'd said they wanted to come with me, then that's fine. But I just kind of left it because of sort of the complications of taking clients with you and then having to sort of keep the connections with the place that you're now leaving, which can get a little bit weird. And I didn't want, well, this is just being very honest, I didn't want to leave bad blood. I was dating a partner at the firm, and I didn't want to take his clients.
Fair enough.
Another logistical.
Right. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna leave and take your clients while I go out.
We had also budgeted and planned for it. So we had an initial marketing budget and had researched there's services out there where you can pay per lead generation. And we had budgeted for that sort of stuff along with some low-level marketing. Like Walter mentioned, we had set up a list of people to go visit with donuts and Chick-fil-A and other stuff. So we had a plan. It wasn't like we just were going to hang up the shingle and say, come all in May. We did have a plan, but it also was that leap of faith. Is the plan going to work? And going back to what Walt said, we just had faith that our plan, we had faith in ourselves that the plan that we had developed would actually yield clients and animals.
The phone started ringing relatively quickly.
Yeah.
We were pretty surprised initially, and then it got overwhelming. It started coming pretty fast.
Well, let's talk about that, because the biggest fear had to be you'd have the greatest lawyers you'd have everything all set up and nobody calls. So what worked? What was it that made it soon overwhelming?
Oddly enough, donuts.
Really?
We decided at least to make part of our practice personal injury, and for personal injury, some of your best connections are doctors. And so we went around to chiropractors who were in the area where we were going to be practicing, literally took them donuts and a stack of our business cards, and we made up this fancy little placard that was like, hey, if you don't work with lawyers, if your clients come in for, they've had a car accident or some sort of injury, please send them to us. And we got a lot of referrals that way, just knocking on doors of chiropractors, taking them donuts. We are lawyers in the area, because a lot of people, especially for chiropractic treatment, they don't want to drive 30 miles to go to the doctor. So concentrating on local chiropractors was actually pretty successsul. We also joined a networking group, which is a kind of a closed circuit networking group, and part of that group was a chiropractor, and we've gotten a lot of business from them, and also just personal connections. And the next biggest thing that worked was we partnered with a much larger law firm whose volume was too high to take all of their litigation cases, so we've been doing sort of their baby litigation cases and doing a fee split with them. And that's also been really successful. So the two most successful things, knocking on doors and reaching out to the connections that you have. We got our foot in the door at that larger law firm because Matt and I had worked with a girl who moved over there. And so we're like, hey, can you get us a meeting with the boss? And luckily she liked us enough to set up that meeting for us.
And I have a real estate litigation background. One of the first things we did was we took a Mercer classmate of ours out to lunch. He works for a firm that does a lot of real estate litigation, and within a week, and this firm has multiple offices, his one email that he sent out to the entire firm started to generate phone calls. So we instantly had real estate litigation cases that were coming in that we were working. This firm also did closings, and they had a strong relationship with one of the largest real estate brokerage firms in the state of Georgia. So a lot of the realtors who were having problems with their sales or with their contracts started calling. And it all started from connections right here at Mercer. It wasn't a hard phone call to make. It was going to have lunch with somebody I had a great relationship with. And I think over tacos, we got 15, 20 cases just started coming into the door. So work your network, get to know the folks around you. Don't just operate in your own little silo. It pays off.
They mentioned what worked. I guess I'll say what didn't. And what didn't was things that we didn't have personal connections to. So like the pay per lead service just didn't work out. It just...
Students might not understand how that's supposed to work. Could you explain that?
So every service is different, but the general premise is that it's a website or a telephone number. I don't know if y'all, in the Atlanta area, there's a, like I think it's a 411 HURT 4 or something. It's a telephone number that you can call in, and that's not a law firm. It's a lead service, and then that lead service spreads it out to the law firms that basically buy geographic locations. So for any referrals that telephone number receives for that geographic location gets routed to that law firm for a fee. There's websites that do the exact same thing. We signed up for a couple of the websites. Martindale Hubble, for example, a good portion of the revenue comes from selling leads for legal services for people that go on their various websites, lawyers.com, estateplanning.com. Basically any of the areaoflaw.com is probably a lead service. And we signed up for a couple of them in the areas of law that we wanted to practice in. And different areas of law have different pricing. So personal injury is by far the most expensive. It can range anywhere from $50 a lead to $300 a lead. Estate planning and real estate stuff usually is $30 to $50 a lead. So it's flat rate for most of them. There's also a couple that you buy an annual contract and they promise you 13 leads per month for that year. So again, the premise is just you pay some money and they then promise you a certain amount of leads. A lead doesn't necessarily mean a client though. You've got to convert them or else you're wasting money. So it's just like an advertising budget, That's the way smaller folks like us can compete with, on an advertising level, with, Ken Nugent and Morgan & Morgan. There's no way we can ever have billboards just lining the interstate like they can. So instead, we can buy into kind of a conglomerate worth of advertising. And that's the general premise. But for our firm, at least, it didn't work. I'm sure there are firms that it works for. I mean, they wouldn't be around if they weren't making money and they were successful for some people. But that didn't work for us.
Let's talk about the firm as it exists right now. Is there, talk to students about what you do. Is there a typical day? I mean, what do your days look like when you're not down here helping these students understand what it's like to open up a law firm?
My day begins with driving to the post office to get the mail, and that is something I never had to do when I worked for the other firms. But I have to do it now because there's no one else. It's me. I've got to get the mail. Got to get the pleadings that are coming in and divvy it out to them. After that probably ends my typical day. And from that point going forward, it's just whatever is on the docket for the day. This week I've got a mediation on Wednesday, 2 depositions on Thursday, a deposition on Friday. So probably spend the next couple days preparing for that sort of stuff. Whereas last week had none of that, and I spent a lot of the week paying bills for the firm and ensuring that our data storage is in compliance. More administrative stuff for the law firm.
It's funny you mention that because the client just called with a fire that person believes it's a fire. We don't think it's a fire, but a fire is going off right now that we'll have to put out at some point. I've been getting called. I got a call at 6 o'clock Sunday morning and another call at 4 a.m. Saturday morning. Now, our software, we route our calls to our phones, so it's not like they knew they were calling my cell phone, but that's what happens is you may get a call early in the morning with a fire to put out, so that day may be different. Keeping up with statute of limitations, keeping up with, what's due discovery. You may have to be in court. Emergency hearing may pop up. There is just no typical day, which I think we all enjoy, is that there's nothing mundane about what we're doing. There's no ho-hum, clock in, clock out type of day. You'll be in the office at 5 one morning, maybe 11 the next, or you may be working till 1, 2 in the morning, one evening.
One of the things the students learn in this program is how to manage multiple deadlines. And they have a whole lot of deadlines for me. And it seems to them a little silly. And maybe a little bit perturbed with me for saying it's a minute late. But you have to learn to manage deadlines. How do you all, you've got lots of things going on, how do you manage to make sure nothing gets dropped?
I'll go back and answer the other question and then pick this one up. A typical day, really a lot of what I do is answering phone calls and emailing people. I mean, because that is the bread and butter of being a lawyer, is communication with somebody. The court, other lawyers, adjusters, your clients. Communication is key and is king in the legal field. So phone calls and emails is most of what I do. Then in between that, it's a little firm admin, a little firm marketing, and then also motions. So this past month, I've had 3 motions to dismiss filed against me, 2 motions for summary judgment, plus motions in limine deadline for trials that I have coming up. Next week, I have a motions hearing and a pretrial hearing, and so it is all about deadlines rolling into that. It does look different every day, but the way we keep track of the deadline mostly is through software. So the firm management software that we use has like a little special calendar app where you can calendar everything in that. I also use a to-do list. It's an online to-do list that's how I organize everything I do. It has, I have a little task for each client, and then within each client, everything I need to do for that client. And if it's something that's deadline, then I put the deadline. And then I also put the deadline 2 days before it's due. Oh, that's right, because you can't put something, this is due today, because today might be too late if it's something that's going to take you 12 hours to finish, like a motion for summary judgment response. You can't do that the day of. So you have to calendar it a little bit before to make sure that it's done in advance. So it's software that use the technology available.
I rely on Matt too. If you guys haven't figured it out, Matt is the nerve center for our firm because he is probably the most organized. Like if you walked into each of our offices, you would know instantly who's more organized than the next. So in addition to that software, we kind of keep each other accountable. And there's been times where, I'm driving and I'll get a call from Matt that says, hey, something's due, 2 days from now. It's like, no, I didn't. Thank you. So we kind of keep each other accountable. Our firm policy is we put at least 2 attorneys on every case for that very reason. Get used to the deadlines. It's just what we do. You're gonna have to get used to deadlines. So we always have kind of a backup where if I'm unavailable, Matt may be second chair on one of my cases, I may be second chair on one of his. We may do the same thing with one of Minerva's cases. So there's always kind of a constant line of communication going on.
And also just don't procrastinate because deadlines, they're deadlines. And if you procrastinate doing the work, then your deadlines will start piling up. And at a certain point, you reach critical mass where you just can't, it's just impossible for you to do what's necessary. There's not enough hours in the day. And that can happen even, that's what Walt's saying, we're being overloaded. I mean, that can happen even if you are keeping up with it. So that's, you just gotta do the work when you have to. And hopefully that means that when you are done with the work, you don't have to work anymore.
And the good news is you've got lots to do, and the bad news is you have lots to do.
Yes.
I'm going to turn this over to the students in just a minute, but I want to give each of you a chance if you've got any advice for them. You all are really very fresh to this experience. It wasn't that long ago you were sitting there. What advice do you have for them? Or what else? We also have this year's cohort of transfer students in here as well. So what advice do you have?
Don't be afraid to take risks if it's heading towards a goal that you see yourself achieving. Like I said, I always wanted to open up my own firm. And it was a risk to go out as early as we did, but I regret no decision that led me to this point. So although, there are inherent risks in everything that you do, you choose option A, option B, option C. Just don't be afraid to take a risk just simply because it is a risk. Calculate whether that option is going to bring you to where you ultimately want to be. My advice is don't play it safe if the way that's safe won't get you where you want
I would say figure out what you like and what you don't like. Again, the work is hard enough as it is, and it's made impossible if you don't like what you're doing. There are so many different types of law out there. Don't feel like, oh, this is where I started, so this is where I have to stay. If you don't like it, don't stay. The profession suffers, you suffer, everybody suffers if you don't really enjoy what you're doing. And again, the wonderful thing about the law is that there are so many different types that there really almost is something for everybody. So find what it is that you want to do and do that. Don't waste your time being miserable doing something you hate because it's a paycheck or just because that's where you got the job. I mean, I'm not encouraging you to not pay your bills and file for bankruptcy, but if you know that you don't like it, start to look for something else, because there's burnout in the profession for a reason. There's substance abuse issues in the profession for a reason, and that's because so many people are unhappy with what they're doing, and you don't have to let it get to that point. If you don't like it, don't stay. Don't stay. That's the worst thing that you can do for yourself and for the profession.
But you won't.
And I would go back to what I said earlier, get to know the folks right here in this school. Everyone, professors, your classmates. We're all not politically aligned on everything. We don't agree on everything. We have constant dust-ups over the simplest stuff. You don't have to be triplets or twins or get along. You can disagree with folks and still have a healthy respect for them. And I think right now in the climate we have, don't let that affect your learning experience here. Enjoy what you're doing here, enjoy the people. Everybody doesn't have to look like you, talk like you, sound like you, agree with everything you agree with. Keep that in mind, because when you get out to this profession, you're going to be having to interact with folks who you don't always align with and agree with. And guess what? You still may have to cut a deal with that person. We find that out every day. I may be sitting across from the table from somebody, we just can't get on the same page about stuff. But it may not be serving our client's best interest. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. Get to know folks. Don't just operate in your own little space, in your own little crew, and where you feel like it's safe. Had I done that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Might be in Kentucky.
Might be in Kentucky. Anybody here from Kentucky? Okay, good.
Well, let me turn it over to the students. What questions do you all have for? Yes.
Good morning, Jalen Smith, Section 4. You, notwithstanding your previous background experience in business, but if any of you could answer, how did the business courses like business admin, you said, and like income tax, how did those classes, if at all, have an effect on how you guys operate your own practice now?
For me, prior to starting this practice, in the practice that I went into, it was huge because of the sophistication of the clients that I represented and the conversations that I had to have. Luckily for me, I came from a banking background, so and I was also an investment advisor, so I had some previous experience on the business side. But also just simple things like explaining to a client why something may be a bad business decision, which we had this conversation driving up here today in a case that is very simple. It's an eviction case where explaining to a client the economics of why maybe the decisions they were making might hurt them later, and the client chose not to take our advice. And everything we told them would happen is starting to happen. So some of you are coming here straight from undergrad. Some of you are coming here, maybe you've had some life experiences. I had life experiences. I had mortgage payments. I had to pay bills. I had to file taxes. So I understood it. Understanding business was very important. For those of you who are coming here right out of school, you may not see it right now, but you're going to get a 1098 in the mail one day. You're going to get a 1099. You're going to get a W-2. You're going to have a conversation with somebody about a business decision. How do I set up my company? Any of you guys know where to go if you want to set up a company right now? Secretary of State, you guys know how to do that? You guys ever tried to go set up a company or establish one, set up an operating agreement, set up an LLC, understand what an S corp how it operates, answering kind of basic business questions. I felt like I needed to know for what I was going to go into and for what I had planned for myself. So that's mine.
I would say the classes help in terms of a bleed over effect between the areas of law. So personal injury, for example, that deals with someone's duty breach causation for tort. It deals with getting them compensation. But once the reality of it is that once the money is being offered by the insurance company or the tortfeasor or the at-fault party, you then have to go back to the client if you represent the plaintiff and explain to them why this money compensates them. And that's going back to what he was saying about it being a business decision. On the civil side of things, it comes down to money. I mean, that's what it is. It's all about money. It doesn't matter if it's real estate, personal injury. That money's what we got. Every now and then you get some equity in there, but for the majority of the time it's money. So if you're able to intelligently talk with them about the tax implications, about the profit/loss of taking option A if you take the money versus option B if you don't take the money, that sort of stuff is what, at the end of the day, the client's going to listen to. And that's what they're paying you to do. You've got to give them good advice, and that is including whether to take the money or not. Because they're the ones that have to decide whether to settle or not. You give the advice, but at the end of the day, they can say, the heck with the $1 million settlement. I know I'm going to lose. I still want to go to court. I want to have my day in court. And as long as they know that, you've done your job.
And it helps you prevent yourself from stepping in it, because you also know when, this is not something I should be giving advice on. If you don't know what you don't know, you got to, it's one of those things where maybe I'm stepping into CPA territory. Maybe I'm stepping into, do we need to hire an economic expert? Because this isn't simple math. So understanding the business side also helps you know when it's maybe you're stepping outside of where you comfortably should be giving advice. And it happens all the time. Do not feel like you know everything. I know you're gonna think you do. I know you want your clients to think you do. That's not how this operates. You're constantly learning. We're always looking up case law. We're always getting educated on something. We don't know everything. You don't know everything. And I think that's where it helps, is you kind of understand your limitations to where to, maybe let's get you the CPA.
And I will answer real quick, is that I didn't take any of the business classes, and I regret it, because I'll be listening to Matt and Walt talk, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. And as somebody who is part of the business owner, it's my responsibility to know what's going on in the business, and I feel like I'm a little bit behind because I didn't take any of those classes, because I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't want to start my own business when I was here. I didn't want to be a business person. I just want to be a little lawyer. And now I kind of regret it, because it's something I'm having to play catch up on, and our accountant's talking to me and saying words, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. So look it up and figure out what my own accounts mean. And so I feel like I'm a little bit behind. It was something that I struggled with and that I'm still playing catch up on. So I'd say as somebody who didn't and is now looking back, I'm like, oh, that probably would have been a good idea.
Great question. A lot of this you couldn't learn in law school even if you tried. I mean, let's just be frank about it. It's something you have to learn. Yes, sir.
Okay, Will Dobar, also best section.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that there's only 5 minutes. What are some other things you could have done in law school to have better prepared you for where you are today?
Stop. Oh, go ahead.
I was get a real job working in an actual legal setting of something. It really doesn't matter what it is, but I actually think it's one of the detriments of the legal profession that you don't have to get a real job before you graduate, and I think that that's a dangerous thing. You need to work somewhere that's legal before you get out. So it doesn't matter what it is, obviously paid is preferred, but some sort of experience where you're in the legal office and you see how it really, really works, because it is very different. Sorry, Will.
No, it's okay. I was going to say stop listening to the noise. You guys are getting a lot of noise right now. You need to be doing this. You need to study this. You need to do it this way. You need to take this pill. You need to, hey, I would maybe find a mentor, maybe someone who has graduated. There's excellent resources here. You can go to Stephanie. Is Stephanie?
No, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth now?
Mm-hmm.
Go to Career Services. Talk with folks, get contact information for someone and just kind of get their take on it, because a lot of what you're hearing isn't necessarily how the profession kind of operates. And I think we were dealing with that information overload as one else too. There was so much stuff coming at you, and you were trying to almost walk somebody else's path. Figure out your path.
My advice would be to get out and about and develop personal relationships. Volunteer somewhere if you want to. Go downtown and hang out with people. I mean, get out and about. Try to meet non-lawyers as well, because the legal profession's kind of insulated. Lawyers hang out with lawyers. We go to lawyer bars. There's a lawyers club in Atlanta. Don't fall into that trap is my advice. Certainly hang out with people, and if they happen to be lawyers, great. But meet others, because that's where you're going to generate cases. That's where you're going to generate facts and understanding that may help you win a case, or at least look at it differently. I remember that we had a guy come in here when we were sitting where y'all are and said that the cases, that at least his cases, were won in the Macy's department, is what he said. Where, what he meant was you have to go buy the overalls and get out in the field and learn what's going on with boots on the ground sort of tactics. And I 100% agree with that. I don't know if I'd go to Macy's, but I agree that you need to be out of the legal profession. The law exists to help people deal with problems, and until you understand what those people are doing and the problem that they're talking about, you just got to get out and about.
And those cases in your book have been condensed to a message that's being conveyed to you. That's not the entire case. There's other facts. There's so much more going on than just what's in that textbook. That textbook isn't gonna be what gets you through. It's a tool to help you, but like I said, you gotta put that real world with that textbook.
It's actually the men's department at Woolworths. All right, we're out of time. You all stick around for a few minutes to chat. So join me in thanking our